What's up, film buffs? This is Brian coming at you from Toxic Reviews, and today I'm reviewing The Suicide Squad. Roll it. The government sends the most dangerous supervillains in the world, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, King Shark, Harley Quinn, and others, to the remote, enemy-infused island of Corto Maltese. Armed with high-tech weapons, they trek through the dangerous jungle on a search-and-destroy mission, with only Colonel Rick Flag on the ground to make them behave. The Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn, stars Margot Robbie, John Cena, Idris Elba, Viola Davis, David Dastmalchian, and a lot of other actors that either survive or don't survive in this crazy sequel to the 2016 film Suicide Squad. So, The Suicide Squad is a somewhat soft reboot sequel to the original Suicide Squad that came out in 2016. The original one was pretty polarizing from critics and fans, primarily because of things like Jared Leto's rendition of the Joker and the ending, the actual villains. So a couple years later, they hired James Gunn, who is famous for Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 from Marvel, to direct this film. I'm not going to get into too much to the whole thing with James Gunn getting fired from Disney and getting rehired, but that's what happened. He got fired from Disney, DC hired him, he did that film, he got rehired at Disney, and now he's going to be doing Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So it's going to be hard not to compare the two Suicide Squad films, which I am going to do lightly here, because I know people that loved the original Suicide Squad, and I know a lot of people that absolutely hated it. I am one of the people that actually liked the original Suicide Squad. I really hated the villains. The ending I did not like. Not sure if that's actual David Ayers, the original director's vision. You know, people are pushing for the release the Ayer cut, just like to release the Snyder cut. Will it happen? I'm not sure. I'd like to see it happen because I think there was some really good elements in the original Suicide Squad. And, you know, I've seen it a bunch of times. I really enjoy watching it because of the dynamic of the characters. You know, the banter back and forth, how they don't like each other. Some of them do like each other. Then you're not sure if they like each other, and the way that they die and everything. But the one thing about the original Suicide Squad that I wanted was I wish it was rated R. And in The Suicide Squad 2021, it is rated R. It's glorious. And James Gunn does a hell of a job with this film. So this film, The Suicide Squad, is a very different film. Both good and bad ways. And in some ways, it's a lot alike. So let's get into how it's different. So this film, okay, you heard the synopsis. It is, at times, the film looks pretty grounded, pretty realistic. But as the film goes on, it gets really crazy, which is cool because there's a lot of villains in the DC universe that are really ridiculous. Like Nathan Fillion plays a character that could detach his arms and everything. And a lot of these characters, and they tell you in the trailer, so I'm not giving away too much, they tell you not to get attached, which is true. Don't get attached to any characters, because I ended up doing that even though the trailer told me not to do that, and I got disappointed when certain people died. And there are two deaths in this film, one early on and one later on, that is going to either agitate you or shock you. It did shock me because I'm looking at some of these characters and I'm like, oh, cool, you know, these characters are here, and it's like, okay, they're dead. The beginning of this film is crazy. So you have two separate teams. You have Idris Elba taking one team on one side of the island, and then you have Michael Rooker, who's awesome. I love Michael Rooker, and he's in, I think, all of James Gunn's films. And he's great as usual. So there's one half of the island that goes out there and they just get massacred. A couple people survive. You'll see it for yourself, but the the massacre is pretty insane, and it basically opens up the for the credits to come out, and it's pretty great. It's that one mission, which I like. It's like self-contained. It's not too big. Suicide Squad is, you grab a bunch of low life villains that they're bad guys. You don't really care if they survive or not. And you throw them into these situations. Amanda Waller, played gloriously by Viola Davis. I'm so happy that she's back. She is awesome and perfect casting for Amanda Waller. Perfect casting. So she's back and she's awesome. Joel Kinnaman is back, and then of course Margot Robbie's back as Harley Quinn. Love her. Obviously she's perfection for the casting. And every time I see her in these DC films, even like Birds of Prey, like films that are not as good, because Birds of Prey was okay, I still enjoyed watching it, but it's like, okay, you still enjoy Margot Robbie's performance, because to me, just like how Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson were born to play the Joker, she was absolutely born to play Harley Quinn. So she does amazing. Joel Kinnaman's back as Rick Flag, and then Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang, which was cool to see some of these characters come back. So you have some kind of continuity. They didn't just erase the first film, which I'm glad, because it does have its audience. So I love all the performances. The banter back and forth is great. James Gunn did the amazing task of making two characters that are so obscure, King Shark and Polka Dot Man, making them my two favorite characters in the entire film. They were awesome. David Dastmalchian, I started following him from the moment that I saw him in The Dark Knight. He has a very small role where Two-Face is holding a gun at his head, and I'm like, wow, this actor is awesome. And then he just blew up and is awesome because he's an amazing talent, an amazing actor. Follow him. He's fantastic, and he seems like a great guy on social media as well. So, and then King Shark, who's voiced by Sylvester Stallone. King Shark was awesome. It's even like there's even moments when with King Shark that you like feel for him, because he doesn't know how to act around people. He's used to just eating people. I don't know. The two characters that I saw in the trailer, and I'm like, oh god, they're putting these people in there, and I'm like, okay, two of my favorite characters. Yeah, Polka Dot Man is awesome. His abilities, like in the trailer, I'm like, how are they gonna describe or like Polka Dot Man's origin? And it's a creative way. It has to do with like Star Labs, where the Flash worked and how he got infected with some kind of alien thing. I'm not going to give away too much, but when Polka Dot Man actually releases the polka dots and actually you see what happens to people, it is so gory and awesome. I loved it. He's great. I love Idris Elba, and it's great to see him take control of a film, because he's the lead character. He's leading all of them, him and Rick Flag. But Idris Elba is like the bad guy, and Rick Flag is, he's basically Colonel Rick Flag. He's there to make sure everyone's getting along and not killing each other. John Cena's funny. I could just keep going on and on with all these characters because there's so many, and they're all really well done. Like even the Weasel, it's such a creepy character, but it's so well handled by James Gunn. And James Gunn is a master of making weird films that you end up liking and don't know why until you just watch the entire film. Like James Gunn has made, you got Guardians of the Galaxy, which is two strange Marvel films, which are my top 10 favorite ones out of the Marvel films. I love Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2. But he's made films like Slither with Michael Rooker and Super, which I love. They're two small films. One's a horror film. One is like a really gory superhero origin film. And they're so delightfully weird. I love how weird he is as a filmmaker. Bring on the weird. It's easy to distinguish him from other filmmakers, which I love that. So by him making this rated R film, James Gunn could really be released into the wild and do whatever the hell he wants. And the film is really well handled. I mean, it's shot very differently than the first one. The first one is the thing I liked about the first one is that it looks and feels like a comic book film. This really doesn't. But it's not a bad thing. It's just different. They're both two very different films that could be liked and disliked by anybody. If someone comes up to me and they're like, "Oh, the new one's better than the original," or if they're like, "The original is better than the new one," I think it's right in the middle for me because I like them both. I like the elements of both films in different ways, which takes me to the banter between the characters, the back and forth between them. I have to watch the original again. I've watched it a couple times, and I loved the banter back and forth and the arguing. But it's very well done here. James Gunn is well versed in this already because he's done Guardians 1 and 2, so he knows how to handle a bunch of characters in a scene together and them playing off of each other. And they're from the very first scene in this film, I had a smile from ear to ear. I was laughing. It's just the comedy's handled very well, and James Gunn is very good with handling dark humor and comedy. There's a couple jokes where you don't know whether you should laugh or not because it's so dark. I love dark humor. I love dark comedies, even when they're not well received, like something like Death to Smoochie. It's with Robin Williams and Edward Norton. It's a very obscure film that didn't get good reviews, but I really like it. Actually, I gotta watch that tonight. Maybe I'll watch Death to Smoochie. No, I can't. Stay focused, Brian. I have 2 other films that I have to watch to review for you guys. I gotta stay focused. Yeah, I just like dark comedy. I think it's very entertaining because it's something that you really shouldn't laugh at, but is somewhat funny the way that it's shot and delivered. So there's a lot of that in this. There's scenes where someone cracks a joke and you're like, I feel kind of dirty for laughing, but I'm gonna laugh because no one else is sitting here and no one else could see me laughing at this. That's the good thing about streaming. Okay, back to the review. There are some problems with this film that I have, and it has to do once again with the ending. To me, if someone watches the first one and says they hate it, and then said they love everything about this film, even the ending, I don't know. I think the ending of this film is just as crazy and preposterous as the first one. In the first one, you have some pretty bad CGI and like I think it's an Egyptian brother of a witch, and it's just the ending is CGI crap fest, unfortunately. This film, you have tonal imbalances. Okay? Throughout this new Suicide Squad, the tone is very off. So, like I was just talking about how there's dark humor. Okay, that's fine. You have scenes that are super funny, scenes that are supposed to be taken super seriously, and then you have scenes that have dark comedy and seriousness in there, and then you're building up to this ending that's sort of serious, and then you have, as the villain, you have a giant colorful starfish. So as I'm watching the ending, I was a little thrown back when I see it's not even a menacing starfish. It's like this giant, colorful starfish that secretes tiny starfish onto people's faces to make them kind of like zombies. Weird. That's cool. I don't mind weirdness at all. The only problem I have with it is that it's not menacing at all. Like, I'm watching this giant colorful starfish, and I can't help but think that I'm watching SpongeBob. So while this is happening, it's like, am I supposed to take this seriously? Is this a comedy? You know, because some people are dying, and then you're supposed to feel bad that these people are dying, but at the same time, it's this colorful starfish destroying a town. No bueno. No bueno. So that's my problem with 95% of comic book films, period. Marvel, DC, for some reason, once you get to the third act, they don't know what to do with the villains. Like like in this film, even in, okay, let's say the first Suicide Squad, okay? They should have just made the Joker the lead villain. Ground it. You know, you don't need these bubbly faced zombies that run around and they shoot them and they have no faces, and then you have an ancient Egyptian brother or whatever that was, and then you have the witch at the end with all this bad CGI, and it's like same thing with this. Just have some hand on hand combat, man. You know, they should have just had like, I don't know, a real villain that wasn't like 100% CGI, that looked like a 90s cartoon. I mean, the effects, it looked great, the textures and everything, obviously, but it's just, for that to be the final scene was just, come on, man. A giant starfish. See, I would probably say in the last 20 years, comic book films don't know how to end themselves. You know, I would say the best endings were like Batman films, and by Batman I mean like the Christopher Nolan series, and like the Tim Burton Batmans. They all ended in realistic ways, you know, like with the Penguin and with Joker. But it's like now we have to have that ending that is just giant buildings crashing, people jumping off of, you know, buildings into a giant creature, and then super loud. And I kind of wish they kept this a little more grounded. Not grounded, I shouldn't say grounded. I mean, it's a film with Polka Dot Man and a shark that walks around, for God's sake. It's a friggin' great white shark that eats people, who rips a guy open in half. It's awesome. So, yeah, I just wish they would really, I wish comic book films in general, DC, Marvel, I wish they would just focus on that ending. You know, it's like they get the first act, the second act really well, and then once they get to that end, it's just, come on, man. The ending is so important in a film. It's so important. It leaves, you know, you have a first impression in a film. So it's like the first 10 to 15 minutes of a film is a first impression. It's like meeting a new girl. It's like meeting a new guy, and everything in between. It's like you meet that person for the first time, first impression. And then when you leave that date, you got to leave that lasting impression. And that is the ending of a film. If you have a stale taste in your mouth at the end of a film, it didn't 100% do its job. But again, both Suicide Squads, even some of these comic book films, they may have a stale ending, but some of them, they're still entertaining enough to want to keep going back. And this is one of those films. I think both Suicide Squads, David Ayer and James Gunn, did their own style. I think they both did a pretty good job with the material, because Suicide Squad is very obscure. It's a very obscure idea. And I'm going to give credit to both of them, honestly. I enjoy them both equally. I actually want to rewatch this one again because I had a really good time with it. There's also some really cool transitions in this film, which I really liked. Transitions of like wording. So it's like for example, if you're transitioning to another scene, you have like James Gunn it was like a perspective thing where you're on top of a roof, and the things on the roof make a wording to introduce you to the next scene, and then the camera goes maybe a little higher or forward, and then it shifts, and you could see that it's things on top of a roof. Just really creative. You know, James Gunn, he doesn't just make a film to make a film. He really puts a lot of work into this, which is fantastic because he's an indie director that's directing bigger films. And I am always not, because I'm a huge indie freak. I love indie films. I think there's something about lower budget films that creates aesthetically and like the ambiance, everything. The script is there. There's more care into the scripts in independent films because it's more character based than trying to get a huge wide audience, you know. And that's something I like about James Gunn, because he, no matter what he directs, he always reminds me of an independent filmmaker, and I love that about him. This is a weird film, but I think you're going to have a really good time with it. Great action, great acting, good CGI, weird friggin' ending, but I think you're going to like it. I'm going to give the Suicide Squad a rating of... Well, film buffs, that was my late review of the Suicide Squad. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share to catch me every time I'm on air. And to catch me exactly when I'm on air, hit that notification button so you could catch me every time I'm on air. Thank you very much for all your support. I have a couple more videos coming for you soon. Like I said, I do have other show ideas that I am developing. It is a lot of work, so it's going to take me some time, but I can't wait to share with you more content. Thank you so much for the support. I love you all. Have a great night.